Hello, my name's Hunter, and today I'll be talking to you about concussions. First off, how do you define a concussion? In my research, I've found that a concussion can be defined as a complex pathophysiological process affecting the brain induced by biomechanical forces. I like this definition the best because it closely relates to the mechanism of injury, which is a direct blow to the head, neck, or body with an impulsive force that gets transmitted to the head. So what that's saying is say a running back in football, running the ball, running full speed, gets hit and stopped in an instant by a lineman or a linebacker. The impulsive force, which is the amount of time it takes something to slow down. If there's too much force behind it and it's not given enough time to adequately slow down, it could become injured. And picture the brain itself. The brain is within the skull, just suspended in cerebral fluid. So when that running back is running full force and gets stopped on an instant, the brain doesn't have enough time to actually slow down. So what could happen is the brain gets kind of whiplash, like it whips back and forth, or like a violent shake, or it may even crash into the skull itself and damage the brain, which would affect the functions of it, which could cause all kinds of signs and symptoms. Some you can see here, such as fatigue, nausea, vomiting, sensitivity to light, sensitivity to noise, etc. There are dozens of different signs and symptoms that are relevant to concussions, and 22 of them can be found on a SCAT-3 form. But a concussion can affect an individual on several different levels, such as physical, emotional, sleep, and mental states. A concussion can affect all four of these, though it can just affect one or two. It doesn't necessarily have to affect all of them to be diagnosed as a concussion. So as far as physical goes, it's more the, of course, physical signs and symptoms such as headache, nausea, visual acuity, balance issues, sensitivity to noise or light, sensitivity to motion, nausea, vomiting, any of those, any kind of sort of regular physical signs of sickness. Emotional level, the athlete might be more irritable, he might be easily upset, they might be just moody overall, just really in an altered mood, just that is not regular for that individual at all. Mental state, the athlete could have issues focusing, they could just feel like their head's in a fog, just not feel quite right. They can sort of function, but to themselves they feel like something's wrong. Their sleep patterns can be affected. Maybe they sleep longer than they can. Maybe they can't stay asleep as normal. Maybe they just can't fall asleep. But it really brings the question, if concussions have all these signs and symptoms, then why aren't they more preventable? And one of those reasons is education. 50% of high school athletes and 70% of collegiate athletes don't report their concussions because they don't know the signs and symptoms of concussions, or they just never had one before. So it's really important for the athletic trainer to sit down at the beginning of the season and prepare some kind of informational packet for the athlete, for the family, so they can review and become somewhat comfortable with what a concussion is and how it can affect them, and just recognizing the signs and symptoms so they can reach out and get medical help if need be. But when the athletic trainer is talking to the athlete or the parents, it's very important that they use proper terminology, such as concussion, so forth, instead of referring to the concussion as a ringer or a getting your clock cleaned or whatever different types of slangs that are floating around, which kind of diminish the severity of the condition. And when I read that in my research, I immediately thought of a time during my sophomore year of high school when I was wrestling. It was a scrimmage, and I wasn't even actually wrestling when I sustained the concussion. It was during warm-ups. Me and my partner were wrestling, and we ended up colliding heads, and it dropped me to the ground. My vision went black for a second, but I was still conscious. I could still move. I just couldn't see for a moment. I saw stars. My ears were ringing. I had a headache. I started to feel somewhat nauseous, and I was concerned. I never had really experienced anything like this before, at least not to this severity. So I approached one of my coaches and told him, hey, something's wrong with me. And when he asked what, I told him my symptoms. He said, oh, you just have a ringer. It's okay. I used to get those in football all the time. Just go back out there and you'll be fine. Just shake it off, walk it off, and just go back to wrestling. I continued wrestling for an hour, 45 minutes. It got to the point where my vision was blurry. I was really having a hard time focusing on what was going on. I was really just dazed and confused. And it got to the point where I just walked off the mat and just curled up in a ball on the floor. And my speech was slurred. It just got really bad. And so I had to have my parents take me to the hospital to get checked out. I mean, to me, that just shows that, it wasn't really that coach's fault. Yeah, someone should have educated him, but that was kind of how he grew up. He grew up around people with the same mentality, and just no one took the time to educate him on what a concussion was. But, so educating the coaches and the athletes and the parents on what a concussion is and what to look for with one is very important. It's also important to have the athletic trainer and the team physician agree upon a take-home packet, which would be a basically your post-concussion treatment plan for athletes who have sustained concussions. The take-home package should include points like take acetaminophen instead of ibuprofen, since ibuprofen has a anti-inflammatory agent, which also acts as a blood thinner, which could increase intracranial bleeding if there is any, and cause a very dangerous medical condition. Avoid drugs and alcohol because they reduce cognitive function of the brain as well as reduce the brain's ability to heal. After the monitoring period, patients' parents no longer have to be, the patient no longer needs to be woken up hourly just to make sure they're okay. Mental and physical rest is also the most important thing you can do for a concussion, since schoolwork or physical activity may aggravate symptoms. The patient should just rest until all their symptoms have dissipated. And return to play, it's very important that the patient has had no symptoms for 24 hours. That's stage 1. Stage 1 is just baseline, like have the patient turn to baseline. This means no symptoms for at least 24 hours, and then the next day the patient will ride a bike or jog to increase their heart rate to less than 70% max heart rate. If they get through that day and these symptoms aren't aggravated, they continue to phase 3, which is moderate exercise. So this would be like sideline conditioning, sports-specific conditioning, such as agility ladders, doing drills by yourself, getting down in stance, exploding up, just really sports-specific cardio exercise. Phase 4 is non-contact exercise. So they are allowed to participate in walkthrough drills or just non-contact drills. And if no symptoms are present after that practice, they slowly work their way into a full contact practice. And then if no symptoms are present after they've had a full contact practice, they are returned to play. They're cleared to play. But at any point in this process, if the patient is to have symptoms, participation should reduce back to phase 1, which would be cognitive and physical rest until the patient doesn't have symptoms for 24 hours. And that concludes my presentation.